December 4th, 1872, midway across the Atlantic Ocean. The sea is calm. A merchant vessel sails slowly in the wind, but something is wrong. The sails are torn. The wheel spins on its own. Inside, food sits untouched on the table. The ship's log ends with a normal entry. Written 9 days ago, the lifeboat is missing. No blood, no bodies, no sign of a struggle, just absence. The name on the hull? Mary Celeste. And her crew? Gone without a trace. For 150 years, the world has tried to explain what happened aboard this ghost ship. Every theory gets close, but none unlock the truth. This is the Forgotten File, and today, we reopen one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. In the late 1800s, ocean travel was still a gamble. A gamble people made, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Trade, transport, migration, all of it happened by ship. But with that came storms, pirates, navigational errors, and disease. Maritime travel in the 19th century was a battle against nature itself. Ships could vanish in an instant, swallowed by wind and current, but they rarely came back, and almost never came back empty. That's what made the case of the Mary Celeste so disturbing. Let's start with the ship herself. The Mary Celeste was a two-masted brigantine, 282 tons, built of wood and iron, launched from Nova Scotia in 1861 under the name Amazon. She wasn't cursed exactly, but her early years were less than lucky. On her maiden voyage, her first captain died suddenly of pneumonia. She was involved in multiple accidents, including hitting and sinking another ship in the English Channel. Eventually, damaged and inactive, the vessel was repaired, refurbished, and renamed, becoming the Mary Celeste in 1869. By 1872, she was owned by American businessman James Winchester and captained by a man named Benjamin Briggs. Briggs wasn't a man of uncertainty. In his 40s, experienced, religious, and cautious by nature, the kind of man you'd trust at the helm. He was married, devoted to his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. He had sailed transatlantic routes before, and when he agreed to captain the Mary Celeste, it wasn't a leap of faith. In fact, in a letter sent just before departure, he wrote to his mother, "Our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope shall have a fine passage. I feel safer on board than I do on land." That letter would be the last anyone ever heard from him. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor. On board were 10 people: Captain Briggs, Sarah Briggs, his wife, Sophia Briggs, their 2-year-old daughter 7 experienced crew members, all personally selected by Briggs. Their cargo, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, a volatile but common industrial shipment bound for Genoa, Italy. Nothing seemed out of place. No one on board had a violent past. The weather forecast was stable. The ship was last seen departing on a calm morning. It would never arrive in Italy. December 4th, 1872, the ghost ship appears. Nearly 4 weeks later, the British merchant ship Dei Gratia, headed across the same waters, spotted a vessel drifting strangely in the distance, 400 miles east of the Azores. It looked half-sailed, half adrift. Captain David Morehouse of the Dei Gratia recognized the ship. He had spoken with Briggs back in New York just weeks prior. Why was the Mary Celeste off course, and why was she empty? Morehouse ordered a boarding party to investigate. What they found only deepened the mystery. First, the lifeboat was gone. It hadn't fallen or been lost in waves. It had been deliberately lowered. The sails were partly set, but some were torn and flapping loose. The binnacle glass was broken, but the ship itself was seaworthy, not sinking, not disabled. Navigation tools were missing, but all the crew's personal belongings remained: jewelry, clothes, tobacco, pipes. On the table, food had been prepared but never eaten. The captain's logbook sat open, the final entry written on November 25th, more than a week earlier. Where had the crew gone? Why did they leave a functional ship? And why hadn't anyone raised a single signal? The crew of the Dei Gratia sailed the abandoned ship to Gibraltar, a passage that took time, scrutiny, and raised even more questions. Once in port, the salvage case kicked off a legal investigation. The British Admiralty wanted answers. They inspected the Mary Celeste from top to bottom. They found 9 barrels of alcohol had leaked. Strange, but not enough to explain a full-scale evacuation. Some suggested the crew had mutinied, killed the Briggs family, and made for the open sea. Others suggested the opposite, that perhaps Morehouse and his crew murdered everyone aboard Mary Celeste and tried to pass it off as salvage. But no blood was found, no signs of violence, no damage consistent with a struggle, and nothing concrete in court ever proved foul play. Eventually, the court released the salvage prize, less than expected, hinting that they still suspected something dark had taken place. But the mystery stayed unanswered. You might think that's the whole story. But we're just getting started, because around this ghostly discovery, an even deeper storm was picking up speed. Not in the sea, but in the minds of historians, sailors, writers, and scandal chasers. The kind of storm that builds theories, ones that twist facts into folklore and truth into terror. Coming up next we dive into every theory that ever tried to explain the crew's impossible disappearance. Pirates, mutiny, poisonous alcohol fumes, seaquakes, sea monsters, and something darker passed down as a curse only on the forgotten file. What happens when a ship is found drifting alone in the middle of the Atlantic? No signs of violence, no storm damage, no crew, only silence. That's what investigators faced in 1872 when the Mary Celeste arrived in Gibraltar under escort. Men from the ship Dei Gratia had physically sailed her in, confused, cautious, and justifiably disturbed. Because what they'd walked aboard wasn't abandoned in panic. It was left neatly, deliberately, but still the people were missing. This is the Forgotten File, and in this chapter we examine everything known and not known about what may have happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste. Climb aboard the Mary Celeste, and you'd be surprised by what wasn't missing. The rigging was in fair condition. The sails were worn and partially damaged, but still flying. The main hatch was open, and strangely, pumps below deck had been disassembled. 9 of the 1,701 barrels of alcohol had leaked, the ones made of red oak, more porous than the others. The galley stores were fully stocked. There was enough food to last 6 months. Cups of coffee were still on the mess table. And every crew member's personal effects, from pipes to boots, had been left in place. But the crew? Gone. Even the lifeboat, the only visible clue, wasn't torn from impact or dragged away by force. It had been lowered intentionally. And the logbook? The last calm, routine entry, position coordinates and light weather, was dated 9 days earlier. So what could force 10 people, one of them a child, to leave a working ship, with no storm, no threat, no call for help? No one knew back then, and 150 years later, we still don't. But the theories, they only multiplied. When the Dei Gratia brought the ghost ship into Gibraltar, an official salvage hearing began. Admiral Shank Gillen presided over the case. He closely questioned Captain David Morehouse and his crew, digging into their version of events with suspicion. Why cause suspicion? Because salvage missions can be worth a fortune. The idea that the Dei Gratia crew might have attacked the Mary Celeste, killed her crew, and tried to claim her seemed plausible to some in the court. But one problem: nothing supported that theory. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no damage, no theft, and every member of the Dei Gratia passed questioning. Eventually, the court awarded salvage money, but only a fraction of what was typical. It was clear. The mystery made people uneasy, and it still does. Let's walk through the major theories, each trying to explain why a ship mid-ocean would be left adrift, empty. Theory 1, mutiny. Could the crew have turned on Captain Briggs, attacked, thrown him overboard and fled? Seems possible, until you look closer. Briggs handpicked his crew. All had sailed commercially before. No records of trouble or instability. His own family was on board, including his 2-year-old daughter. If a mutiny occurred, no sign of struggle, fire, or damage supports it. Mutiny sounds exciting, but there's no evidence at all. Theory 2. Piracy. What if pirates hit them? Pirates did operate in the Atlantic, but real pirates take cargo. They would have taken valuables, jewelry, food, tools. They would not leave a ship untouched except for some leaked alcohol and a missing lifeboat. And there were no pirate reports in that region for months. All ships near the Azores had logged calm passages during that period. Theory 3. Rogue wave or seaquake. Here's where nature steps in. A rogue wave or rare seaquake could rock a ship so suddenly that it seems to tip or take on water. It's possible Captain Briggs believed the ship was about to founder and ordered an emergency evacuation to the lifeboat. Crucially, water below deck was found, but only 3.5 feet deep, not enough to sink her. If they tied the lifeboat to the ship, hoping to return, what if the rope snapped? The current could pull a boat away faster than oars could fight. 10 people, gone in minutes, but again, the ship was still afloat, stable and stocked. Why not come back? We may never know. Theory 4. Alcohol fumes. Now, the most widely accepted explanation, a chemical accident. 9 barrels of alcohol were found empty, but these weren't drinking alcohol, they were industrial, highly flammable. If fumes leaked without combustion, Captain Briggs might have feared an explosion below deck. He orders his family and crew into the boat, waits nearby to see if the ship ignites. It doesn't, but a gust of wind snaps the line. The lifeboat is dragged away, quickly, too far, too soon. They try to return, but in the open Atlantic, a drift of a few hundred meters becomes a disaster. This theory explains everything, except why none of them were ever seen again. Theory 5. Something else entirely. Once the newspapers got hold of the story, they turned mystery into legend. Sea monsters, deadly fogs, the Bermuda Triangle, even though we were nowhere near it. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, before writing Sherlock Holmes, published a fictionalized story of the Mary Celeste in 1884. It was pure fiction, but people read it as truth. The idea of a ghost ship took root, and the real story, whatever it was, got erased by the need to feel spine tingles. Later pulp magazines claimed the crew were abducted. Some said sea ghosts claimed the ship. But behind every myth was still one truth. A ship was found floating, not broken, not bloodied, just empty. So what do we really know? There was no piracy, no obvious mutiny. The weather was calm. The ship was safe. The most accepted explanation, alcohol leak and accidental lifeboat separation, makes the most sense. But even then, why didn't they return to the ship once the fumes cleared? Why didn't the boat drift near shore eventually? Why was nothing ever found? Every theory stops short at that point. It's the blank space that haunts the story more than any monster. A ship floats, but its souls are missing. That's not just mystery, that's loss. Coming up. Next, what happened to the Mary Celeste after the mystery? Her ghost ship reputation. Bad luck. A final fate no one talks about. In the next, we explore the cursed second life of the ship, from superstition to shipwreck. Only on the Forgotten File. The ocean is full of stories. Some start with storms, others end in shipwrecks. But the story of the Mary Celeste begins the moment she was found, empty, floating on calm waters, intact and abandoned. For over 150 years, the mystery has endured. The crew was never found. The captain's family vanished without a trace. And the ship that should have been remembered for tragedy was remembered for something else, bad luck. This is the Forgotten File. And in this final chapter, we follow the second life of the Mary Celeste, from relic of mystery to legend of the cursed sea. After the salvage trial ended in Gibraltar, the Mary Celeste was officially returned to her American owner, James Winchester. Once considered a proud merchant vessel, her name had now become synonymous with fear. Superstition spread fast among sailors. No one wanted to crew the Mary Celeste. Some believed the ship was cursed. Others thought it carried a spiritual residue from what had happened on board. But Winchester wasn't sentimental. To him, she was still seaworthy and valuable. So, the ship kept sailing. New captains, new cargo, and new routes. But the bad luck never left her. In 1873, barely a year after the rediscovery of the ship, her new captain, Edwin G. Flood, died at sea mid-voyage. Officially, it was natural causes. But rumors said otherwise. Sudden disappearance, unexplained behaviors, moments of confusion before the end. Over the years, Mary Celeste passed from one investor to another, each hoping to change her fate. But every owner lost money. The ship ran into repeated trouble. Bad weather, damaged cargo, delays, sickness aboard crew. By the early 1880s, she was disrespected, undervalued, and regarded as an unlucky relic from a tragic past. To put it simply, no one wanted her. In 1884, the ship was acquired for a last attempt at profit by a man named Gilman Parker, a sea captain with little patience and fewer options. Together with a shady group of investors, Parker hatched a plan. Load the ship with a worthless shipment, insure it for far more than it was worth, sail it to the Caribbean, wreck it deliberately, claim the loss. So Parker filled the Mary Celeste with low-value cargo, cheap rubber boots, cat food, animal hides, and insured it for $30,000, a massive amount at the time. He sailed to Haiti, where the ship was intentionally run aground on a reef off Gonave Island. The cargo was soaked, destroyed, and the ship damaged beyond repair. The plan would have worked, except Parker made one fatal mistake. The insurance claim sparked immediate suspicion. An investigation revealed the inflated value of the cargo. The insurers sued. Witnesses came forward. Parker was arrested, but never convicted. However, he never recovered. Within a year, Parker died, suddenly and publicly shunned. One of the conspirators committed suicide. Another was institutionalized after reports of hallucinations and paranoia. And just like that, the Mary Celeste's career ended, not with a voyage, but a scam that turned deadly. A ghost ship sent to die on a reef. Even before her final wreck, the Mary Celeste had entered folklore. In 1884, author Arthur Conan Doyle, still years away from writing Sherlock Holmes, published a fictionalized short story called J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. It twisted the real event into a chilling tale of conspiracy and murder, turning the missing crew into a storytelling goldmine. The story was printed in prestigious magazines and assumed by many readers to be factual. Almost overnight, the Mary Celeste became the ghost ship that haunts the seas. But Doyle's version buried what really happened. From then on, writers leaned into the supernatural, sea curses, phantom pirates, time distortions. By the time 20th century documentaries revisited the ship, the real family aboard, Briggs, Sarah, their daughter Sophia, had been pushed into the background of their own tragedy. What happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? We will never truly know. The alcohol fumes theory still stands as the neatest explanation. A panic over explosion risks, evacuation to wait it out, a boat's line snapping in the wind. But it doesn't explain the quiet, or the stillness, or why 10 people left behind everything, including tools to signal help, in a ship that was still clearly afloat. No storm, no SOS, no sense. It's that emptiness that continues to haunt more than any monster tale ever could. Maybe Briggs misjudged. Maybe something split the crew mentally. Maybe it was all timing. Or maybe the ocean simply took them. Without drama, without violence, without mercy. Just gone. To this day, the Mary Celeste remains one of the most famous unsolved maritime cases in Western history. She has no gravesite, no wreck to recover, no final message written out in panic. The sea returned her to us intact, but emptied. A perfect ship built for crossing oceans, now drifting, silent. When she was found, food was still on the table, boots by the bunks. The last log entry was calm, normal, every day. And that's what makes this story so disturbing. Horror doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it sneaks in under canvas sails. The Mary Celeste carried its people into brittle history and returned alone. What frightens us more, the things we can see, or the people who leave behind no sign they were ever there? Which theory do you believe? Let us know in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, hit subscribe, because here on The Forgotten File, history doesn't end. It waits beneath the surface, and sometimes it drifts silently toward us.